When you think of the New England Patriots, what's the first word that comes to your mind? Dominance is probably up there. 9 Super Bowl appearances, 6 Super Bowl titles since 2000. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, the tandem, dominating the last 2 decades of the NFL. However, another word that comes to mind when you think of the Patriots is scandal. In 2006, known as the Spygate scandal, the New England Patriots were caught filming the New York Jets' football games illegally and were fined by the NFL for doing so. In 2014, the Patriots were involved in another scandal, this one known as the Deflategate scandal, in which they were quotedly deflating footballs in a cold weather game to be able to grip the football better and throw it better, kick it better, and they won the AFC Championship of that game 41-14. Another sabotage that I'm going to talk about today is the sabotage of the Denver Broncos. This is a sabotage that is not talked about a lot because it led to the Broncos signing Peyton Manning, so it did backfire for the Patriots. As a sports media major and an avid Denver sports fan, I've seen the effects of this sabotage after it happened, and it is only, like I said, not talked about because of the Peyton Manning signing. Otherwise, there could have been way more repercussions from this sabotage. Today, I will explain this infiltration of the organization, and first, I will explain why the sabotage was needed. Secondly, I'm going to explain the Josh McDaniels hiring and what he did to dismantle the Broncos. Thirdly, I'm going to explain what happened after McDaniels left. Now that I have explained that Denver was sabotaged, I'm going to put out some stats about the Patriots against the rest of the league and against the Broncos. The Patriots have been the most dominant team of the 21st century in the NFL, or all sports in general. However, there's one team that they always seem to struggle against, and that is the Denver Broncos, even today. Tom Brady, the most successful, considered by many to be the greatest quarterback of all time, has a winning record against every team in the NFL except the Denver Broncos. He's 7-9 and 1-3 in the playoffs. The Broncos are a team that the Patriots simply just could not seem to figure out for some reason, and they really seem to struggle against the Broncos on the road at Mile High Stadium. With the history of the past struggles versus Denver, I'm going to talk about why the sabotage was needed. In 2008, the Denver Broncos ended up looking for a head coach after being 8-5, losing the final 3 games, and missing the playoffs, going 8-8. And the franchise decided that their longtime Super Bowl winning head coach Mike Shanahan should be terminated. Enter Josh McDaniels. He was 31 years old at the time. He was a protege of Bill Belichick. He was a boy genius, considered by many. He was offensive coordinator in New England, and he was hired by the Broncos to be the head coach in 2009. The Broncos had a Pro Bowl quarterback the year before in Jay Cutler. They had a very, very good offense full of many stars. They were a top 10 offense. And they just had a really bad defense, but most experts predicted a top 5 offense that could easily outscore most of the teams in the league and definitely compete on what at the time was a pretty weak AFC with the exception to the Patriots. However, McDaniels in 2 years would trade away Cutler, and he would trade away many of the other Broncos stars, and he would also draft horrible players in their replacement. The Cutler trade happened before the season even started. The young quarterback was, quote, embarrassed and harassed by Josh McDaniels, and according to his agent Bus Cook, the first meeting was a lecture conducted by McDaniels in which he bragged about his accomplishments that he had with not only Tom Brady, but in 2008 when Brady tore his ACL, he bragged about his accomplishments with quarterback Matt Castle on the Patriots. That ended in Josh McDaniels, quote-unquote, bash and berating Cutler in his game to the tune of a verbal flogging neither had ever witnessed, according to Cutler's manager. After that, Jay Cutler basically said, I'm not going to play for this team. I'm not going to play for this coach. Trade me away. Running back Peyton Hillis, he was another breakout star for the Broncos in 2008. He was a fan favorite. Everybody was falling in love with him. He was a hard runner. He was a good runner. He was replaced by McDaniels' first draft pick that he made with the Broncos, which was the 27th overall pick back in 2009, and that was Noshawn Moreno, running back out of Georgia. And there was speculation that Hillis and McDaniels didn't necessarily get along, and that was later confirmed. Hillis was sent to Cleveland for a 6th-round draft pick, and quite possibly one of the biggest quarterback busts all time in Brady Quinn. Wide receiver Brandon Marshall is another superstar that was on the Broncos. He was a top 5 receiver in the NFL. He expressed his displeasure with the team after Cutler was traded. He got not as many targets from their replacement quarterback, Kyle Orton, and he was traded to the Miami Dolphins for a 2nd-round pick in 2010. The Broncos had lost all of their key fan favorite players from that, and McDaniels was yet confident that the team's draft picks would exceed the past players that they did lose. However, McDaniels was only the head coach of the Broncos for 2 years, and in those 2 years they started 6-0 in 2009, but ended up finishing 8-8. And then in 2010 they started 3-9 when McDaniels was fired. They lost the most embarrassing game in quite possibly franchise history, 59-14, to the Oakland Raiders at home, their arch rival. The franchise was thrown into the bottom of the AFC, the bottom of the NFL in general. They were a shell of the team that they had used to be in just a year prior. It was their worst franchise record since 1982. And McDaniels, after being fired by the Broncos and after literally dismantling their team, he was hired back by New England the next year to be the offensive coordinator again, like nothing ever happened. His draft picks were horrible. No player that he drafted lasted longer than the 2014 season except for one player, and that's wide receiver Demaryius Thomas. To sum up, Denver was headed in the right direction, and Josh McDaniels infiltrated the Broncos organization and threw them off the right track. It was speculated by many experts that the Broncos would be a competitive team in the AFC for a very long time, simply because they had a Pro Bowl quarterback that was only entering his 3rd season. They had a Pro Bowl wide receiver that was young. They had a running back that seemed to be a next pretty solid running back in the NFL. They just needed a few pieces to be very, very competitive. And McDaniels literally tore all of that apart, drafted horrible players. And McDaniels, with his trading away of stars like Jay Cutler, Peyton Hillis, Brandon Marshall, he left the Broncos a shell of what they used to be. And like I said, the only reason that this is not talked about is because the Broncos eventually ended up signing Peyton Manning in 2013 and then went to 2 Super Bowls, winning one of them. To sum up, the Patriots' attempt to sabotage Denver was a small chapter in the New England Patriots dynasty. It was a small chapter in Denver sports history, and it only goes to show that teams will do whatever they can to stay at the top of the pinnacle. It goes to show that teams will do whatever it takes to win, and it goes to show that the New England Patriots definitely took some shortcuts to achieve their dynasty.